the Scotch story is interesting, but the drink of choice is still Baijiu or Mau Tai, which is that nasty-tasting clear liquid you have after dinner. With local government officials, you have dinner afterwards. Everybody drinks a lot and gets drunk. The reason Scotch got popular is it was a rich man's drink, so it was showing off. Last year, the government in Beijing cracked down on corruption. Restaurant sales fell, liquor sales fell, and Scotch sales fell. So this is actually good news for China. China's grown slower than before, but the Scotch story is an anti-corruption story.
Well, good news for China, bad news for the Scotch, Kevin?
Well, I have a question because last year, just at the beginning of the year in January, I'm part of a wine buying group that buys Bordeaux futures in Boston. We sold a case of Cheval Blanc for $28,000 before we took delivery to a Chinese merchant. We paid a 15% commission. That was an insane price. We tried to off the same case this year. He's not even a buyer. So wow. The same things happened in high-end Bordeaux and Burgundies. But John, the Chinese aren't stupid. They're pulling back.
So that's the question. Are they pulling back? I mean, is this
a microcosm of decelerating growth in China? We need to bring Jim Chanos on the show and ask him about, along with housing and other areas, are we seeing a decline in luxury consumption?
And John, it's also, as you said, I mean, part of this was their effort, the Chinese government's effort to kind of shore up popular support by reducing public consumption, if you will. But you got to admit, this seems to go a lot deeper now.
Well, China is slowing. It's slowing this year. It'll probably grow a little more than 7%, 7.2, 7.3. But that's still 3 times the U.S. and infinity times Europe. And so let's not worry too much about those guys. The economy's changing, too. It's going gradually from manufacturing and infrastructure toward services, which means the jobs in the South are harder to get than before, and the jobs in the North are a little easier. And remember, the new leaders come from Shanghai. Shanghai's a financial center, so this restructuring is going to continue. But the wine you're talking about and the Scotch we're talking about, those were sold to rich guys, to sweetheart local government leaders, or local government leaders to sweet talk foreign investors coming in. That's not the middle-class customer in China. The middle class is doing fine. Their incomes are growing 10% a year.
Yeah, I wonder, though, in terms of the middle class versus the upper class in China, it seems like there's a little bit of a trade going on in luxury because so many of the luxuries are becoming mass and everybody can have now the same thing. The people who are at the upper echelon are trying to find things that are different than everyone else. We've seen this in the handbag industry where instead of buying the Michael Kors bag that everyone else has, they're going to vintage. So I wonder how much of this is an actual economic indicator versus a swapping out into something that maybe isn't accessible to everybody else.
Last word, John?
Well, that's always true. And of course, rich Chinese are always interested in getting capital offshore because their capital's been appropriated 3 times in the last 50 years. So luxury goods are a good way to do that, too. So I think the real money in China is in the upper middle class growth, not in the luxury sales area.